Program Chuck Morse, Left Right Radio, every afternoon around 12 o'clock, give or take. My guest is Lloyd Marcus. Lloyd is the host of the website, the un-Hyphenated American, chairman of the Conservative Campaign Committee. He refers to himself as a Tea Party guy. I think that's when you got started with this, Lloyd. And thanks for joining me, Lloyd. How are you?
Hello, Chuck, my patriot brother. Look, I have to tell you, guys, my mama would say the devil is a liar. We've had so many technical difficulties attempting to get this interview done. So this most definitely will be a fantastic session.
Well, the technology is interesting. Just to comment briefly, it's a Facebook technology I use here, Live TV. And it allows me to go live every day on Facebook and then download it into YouTube and all the other servers like Spotify and Google Plus and all these good people. And I could have a three-way talk. I could do a solo talk. It's great, for a former talk show host like myself.
That is fantastic. So what are we going to talk about, Chuck?
Well, Lloyd, I want to start out. Thank you for asking. I want to start. You're a columnist and you're an activist and you're a broadcaster. What got you into activism? I guess we might ask. I know it's kind of a broad question, but I think it's a good place to start.
Actually, I think that I have been a conservative my whole life and did not even know it. When I was 9 or 10, my parents moved from a Baltimore ghetto into a government high-rise building. And that was a brand spanking new building, 11 stories high. And 99% of the residents were black, poor families. I'd say within about 6 months, I noticed that all of the elevators were always broken. The stairwells smelled like urine, and you had to walk in the dark over empty whiskey bottles to get to our apartment on the 6th floor. The bottom line, I saw that building turning to a huge ghetto, and everybody around me was telling me everything was the white man's fault, And remember, I was a little kid, maybe 9 or 10, and I said, "Well, how can we stop these mean white people from sneaking in here at night and breaking the elevators and urinating in the stairwell?" So that was my conservative roots. I knew back then that people had to take personal responsibility for their lives rather than always blaming someone else. And sadly, that same mindset is happening in America today. Blacks are murdering one another, 40 and 50 every weekend in Chicago and Baltimore, and yet every black person all over media is still saying everything is the white man's fault. And that's just sad. But the thing that dramatically changed my life was back in 1952. My father broke the color barrier to become a Baltimore City firefighter, and that afforded my family funds to move out of the projects and move to a black suburban community. And having my father in the house was a powerful thing because the white firefighters despised my father. He could not have a cup of coffee from the same coffee pot as the white firefighters.
Oh my God!
And yet, despite that, and yet, despite that horrific racist working condition, my father won Firefighter of the Year 2 times. And so he defeated racism simply by being a man of character. My father, he's a pastor, and so he was a man of character and a man who basically strived for excellence. I think I'm getting a little emotional because my father is 90 years old.
Incredible story.
Yes. My father is now in hospice, but he's the greatest man that I have ever known.
Wow. I mean, Lloyd, it's a very, very powerful story. And a thought that comes to my mind is that when your father had to deal with this horrendous racism that is so inculcated in people, not only did he personally persevere and prevail, but I would suggest that by his example, which was to not let it, poison him and not let it hurt him and overcome it himself, he probably brought a lot of people out of that.
Oh my goodness. My father won the respect of every firefighter who ever worked with him. And one of the guys who hated my father the most, he saved my father's life, and they became lifelong friends.
In a sense, it's such a positive story because it runs contrary to some of the left-wing narrative, which is that the way to combat racism is to put everyone under a microscope.
Yes.
And then condemn. And then if they find a racist gene, or somebody might have made an offensive comment at some point, that person is destroyed. I mean, they hold them up, especially if they're not on the left. They become like. They're driven out of office. They're marginalized, and that doesn't reduce racism.
No,
all that does is create tyranny. I mean, what your father did as an individual is heroic because not only did he stand up for himself, but that's how you reduce racial tension and racial feelings by getting to know people and by being friendly. I mean, I think of Jackie Robinson as an example of that. When he went into the Brooklyn Dodgers, he was brought in by a manager who was Christian, who knew that racism was wrong. Mm-hmm. And he was told, this is going to be difficult. People are going to be insulting and they're going to be offensive. You have to have a certain kind of person that can do this. And he stood up and did it, and he broke the barrier.
Absolutely. Well, and that was something else also. A lot of young, arrogant blacks would say to a day, "Oh no, I would never put up with that kind of nonsense." But my father was a young man with a wife and 5 kids to feed, so he behaved like a man. And we don't have men today. We have a whole bunch of arrogant, spoiled wimps, like all of these multi-millionaire black football players. Excuse me, I need my wife to give me a tissue.
You need a little bit. You're getting, as they say in my tribe, you're getting a bit verklempt.
Hey, that sounds strange. No, but you have all of these multi-millionaire football players running around screaming racism and claiming that they are persecuted. It's patently absurd.
Well,
and somebody needs to tell them no.
Yeah, but they should also set an example for how to overcome racism by confronting it with compassion and realizing that most people are just ignorant, and they need to kind of make a human contact. The best thing is if you go out and make contact with people and you're friendly. I mean, I'm seeing this in some cases, even, well, and I don't want to get into details. In my own community, we have people who have become viciously anti-Israel, and they're self-hating Jews. And the best way to confront that isn't to scream at them and say you're insane, but to lead by example. Say, look, this is who I am, and I think you're in error, but I respect your right to have your opinion, and not call out the troops. Not have people destroyed over erroneous and wrong opinions, but to approach it with compassion. I think of the late great Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Nonviolence. We're going to show by example. They have the March on Washington, where people showed up with a shirt and tie, and they
exactly.
Yes. And they were like, we're not asking for anything from you. We're just asking for our place at to take place in the American dream. We want to achieve by ourselves. We're asking for a hand, not a handout.
Hey, Chuck. And speaking of which, something that so offends me is that the Democrat Party continuously tells Black Americans that they are stupid and that they are inferior, that Black people cannot find their way to the Department of Motor Vehicles to get a photo ID to vote. Democrats,
I was going to ask you about that because
that's too hard for Blacks.
It always that whole conspiracy theory, which was cooked up by this group called what is it? The Center for Constitutional Rights. It's one of these turf groups that's funded by George Soros. That suddenly, they came up with these phony baloney statistics showing that somehow Black people can't register to vote. It's insulting. If you can go to, you need an ID to do anything in this society. You need an ID to buy a bottle of beer.
Cash a check, yeah.
Of course now I'm sure there are anecdotal situations where someone, whether they're Black or white, isn't able to create or produce some kind of an ID, but it's so obviously nothing more than a chance at voter fraud, and that's exactly what they're doing.
Right.
You'll notice, not to get into a subject here, but in 2012, Barack Obama received like 99% of the vote.
How's that possible?
I think there's a couple of precincts we got 105%. Right? And even recently, I noticed that they had a recount after Trump won. Jill Stein wanted to recount Michigan, and they shut the whole thing down when they realized that Detroit, a massive voter fraud. Voter fraud. So I think that it's quite clear that that's what this is all about, and we don't care if they throw Black people under the bus and insult them with the most ridiculous charges.
And they do, and they do so many things to harm Black people, to tell Black people that they are stupid. In California, a school wanted to make it acceptable for Blacks to speak Ebonics because they said learning English was too challenging, and yet the Black Democrat voters accepted that. They should have been highly insulted. When my father won the firefighter of the year, they did not lower one standard or make any special concession because he was Black. He competed on the same level as the whites. Isn't that what Black civil rights movement should want? Why does the Black civil rights movement hate businessman extraordinaire Herman Cain? Why do they hate world-renowned Black retired neurosurgeon Dr. Ben Carson? Why do they hate the most powerful, or at least one of the most powerful men in the world, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas? All of these men got where they are the old-fashioned way. They earned it, and they should be held up as shining examples to Black kids all over America. Look, if y'all guys stop having babies out of wedlock, stop murdering one another, and stay in school, this is what you can achieve. And yet the modern civil rights movement, they hate this message, and they hate these Black civil rights heroes. It's nuts.
Because the so-called black leadership has been bought and paid for by the left and by the Democrats.
Yeah.
And I said the same thing about the
They have sold their souls. Yeah.
The same thing with the Jewish leadership. They're all in the pocket of the left.
Yeah.
Now, brings us to, talk about some of the issues you just brought up, Lloyd, which are extraordinary. They like to point the finger of racism at conservatives and libertarians and anyone that doesn't genuflect in their direction.
Right.
And yet it's been their policies that have hurt the black community. I'll point to a couple of examples. The massive increase of a federalized welfare. Now, I'm not talking here about charities that can actually. I'm not talking about local programs that can help a person or a family that is temporarily in trouble and they need help.
Of course,
Nothing else to turn to. We're talking about a program that will, if you scratch the surface, they will admit that all they're interested in is redistributing wealth and creating dependency so they have clients. And the result has been terribly damaging to the black community. It's been damaging to white people too, no question.
Yeah.
If you're paying someone not to be married to get rid of the man,
right,
and then you're paying them more to have children out of wedlock, then that's a social disaster. What they did was they took the black family, which according to Daniel Patrick Moynihan's report issued in 1964, he was Assistant Secretary of Labor in Johnson's administration. The black family was intact. It was like 80%.
Yes.
And the black family
That's true.
The black church was intact. It was faithful. It transformed Christianity all over for everyone.
That's true.
And he warned that this program would damage the black family. And today it did. And not only is a black family damaged, where you have the men are not in the house, so the children are not brought up by a father, but these same people, the left-wingers, are anti-business, as you say. So you have businesses driven out of the black neighborhoods. I mean, we can give one example. Walmart wanted to open in south side of Chicago, and they were driven out by Acorn because they were anti-capitalist. So now what do they have there? A rat-infested lot. The point is that they have an anti-business attitude, an anti-family attitude, an anti-faith attitude, where they've totally co-opted the black church, which was a moral force. And they on top of all that, then they have their cockamamie education modalities, where these kids are herded into these big public schools where they learn look, say, reading instead of phonics, so they don't know how to read properly.
Right.
Father at home to help give them the proper reading, and so then they wonder why they've got learning disabilities and why there's a proliferation of drug abuse and there's no employment, so you have a proliferation of crime. Now, and of course, we could talk about how they've introduced drugs, but that's another subject. I mean,
but like right now, 70% of black kids, 70%, Chuck, are raised in single-parent households. So they have absolutely destroyed the black community. And something that highly offended me of them always marketing garbage to black folks, the Oxygen channel wanted to feature this reality show called All My Baby's Mamas. And this was about a black rapper who had babies by 11 different black girls. And we were supposed to watch this fun show about how he deals with this. And this was marketed to young black families. Finally, some black folks had the common sense to protest, and the Oxygen channel canceled the show. But this is what liberals think of black America. And something else too. I learned that a black kid won the final round of Jeopardy. How come we don't know that black kid's name? But who do we know? Michael Brown, thug. Trayvon Martin, thug. Freddie Gray, Thug. These are national heroes to liberals, but yet this academic black kid master goes totally unnoticed and unreported.
Absolutely. And just as a side issue, also, I'm sure you followed the controversy around Kanye West.
Yes, I have.
He actually had the courage to come out and support President Donald Trump. Back when he was criticizing Bush, he was a hero. Now, I've heard radio programs, including black radio programs on cable, on Urban View, basically calling in question his sanity.
Oh, I know. But look, I have to tell you, okay, I'm a black conservative. I have been preaching black conservative conservatism, I would say, for the least, for at least the last 10 years. Kanye West has 27 million Twitter followers. So millions of black kids have heard conservatism for the first time, and thanks to Kanye West, black male support of Donald Trump has doubled. So he is making a difference.
Oh yeah, no, it's an incredible thing to watch. And so, we bring it up. You also brought up the glorification of these thugs who did not deserve to be murdered.
But they weren't murdered, and that's it.
They were shot in the course of a crime. But nevertheless, look, I want to bring this up only to point out that after a generation of destruction due to left-wing policies, we already outlined those: the welfare state, the destruction of the black church, the destruction of black education and the black family, and the destruction of business with anti-business attitudes, and the obviously resulting dysfunctional family and troubled generation, that then all these white liberal social workers can come in and reap money and take care of people, create a cottage industry for themselves. Then you have the last line of defense, in a way, to help people. The only people left who care, and those are the neighborhood cop.
Hello.
Now, I'm not suggesting that there aren't racist cops, but the point is that the vast majority of them, they're going into a neighborhood that now has drug gangs and crime due to the left-wing social policies, and they're the only ones who are actually trying to keep order and protect the 95% of the people who are trying to get on with their lives, who are trying to get to work, who are trying to have some safety, and now they're under assault.
I know. Well, that's another scam as well. I mean, you would listen to the mainstream media, and you would think that the cops are just running around murdering blacks on site. As a matter of fact, I can't think of the state. I think it was Alabama, but they ran a media campaign telling the black parents to send their kids to school in bulletproof vests to protect them from racist cops. That's patently absurd. That's patently destructive, divisive, and evil, to basically generate hate against white cops, to generate hate against Republicans and conservative. That is evil and totally irresponsible. When you look at the stats, there's a lady, her name is Heather McDonald. She wrote this book, and cops defend blacks more than anyone else in this country. Cops have saved thousands of black lives. A cop might shoot a black once or twice a year. 6,000 blacks are killed every year at the hands of other blacks, but we don't hear that. And most of the people are like the people in my family. They are low info voters. So basically, the only news that they get is from CNN and the mainstream. So they are just hearing all of these hateful lies against cops. Yeah.
Well, that also brings us, Lloyd, to the present situation politically, and that is that I would argue that Donald Trump represents a natural message to minorities, to millennials, for that matter, to working people. That's his natural constituency. The very rich, the top 1%ers, they're all part of this left-wing, international elitist cabal. That's not to say there aren't some rich people that are on the conservative side as well, but they're more the exceptions. Mm-hmm. How do we overcome that? Now, you mentioned that a recent poll which shows that Trump's support amongst more black men than women has doubled up to 18%. I've seen that poll.
Yeah.
And that there are inroads being made, especially now that the job numbers are better, that black unemployment is the lowest it's been since unemployment records have been kept. Is it possible that maybe this year, maybe next year, there very well may be the kind of social change that might lead the black community back to its roots?
Wow, I would love it. I would love it, man. Look, I think as long as Trump continues to be Trump, and Trump is basically performing like a businessman, and he has black unemployment at an all-time low. As a matter of fact, a young black kid was wearing a "Make America Great Again" cap in the cheesecake factory the other day, and I think a dozen cheesecake factories employees came to his table. They threatened to beat him up because he was wearing a "Make America Great Again" cap. But I have to say, the courage of that young black kid is going to inspire other black kids. So, yes, I do believe a new day is coming in America.
I think
Black America.
it's going to require weeding out the old leadership and relegating them to the ash bins.
Nancy Pelosi. Chuck Schumer. Get rid of those old nasty dinosaurs who just keep telling black folk, y'all are stupid and y'all need to keep voting for us Democrats so we can take care of y'all.
Yeah,
y'all are too dumb to take care of y'allself.
They offer the black community only two things that I can think of, and those are abortion and welfare. That's about all.
And what that does, it keeps blacks enslaved. I was raised in Baltimore. I'm almost 70 years old. Why? Okay. And my whole life, Democrats have been running Baltimore. Why are more blacks on welfare and living in poverty today in Baltimore than 50 years ago? I mean, it makes no sense. That should tell black folks right there, you are keeping the wrong people in office. You are keeping these people who want to keep you on the welfare dependency government plantation. And something else also, any black person that stands up for themselves and believes in self-reliance and education, rather than that a black person being celebrated, they are vitriolically attacked by Democrats. Why? So they must have an agenda to keep blacks down, to keep blacks dependent. And when I tell this to my family, they look at me with this blank stare and they think that I'm the world's biggest Uncle Tom.
I mean, I have to send a credit to my Jewish family when I mentioned that I supported Donald Trump. I mean, my mother didn't speak to me for a year. And people are still agitated because Trump is a revolutionary figure. I mean, he's bringing about a sea change in our culture that people can't even possibly begin to comprehend.
Right.
We could get into that, but I want to just go back to the fact that I think that now that in spite of all these left-wing programs that have kept Black people down, whether they were consciously meant to do so or not is another question. I think some of these people are well-meaning, but you see something that doesn't work over and over again. Eventually, you have to ask yourself what's going on. But either way, Black people nevertheless have succeeded in ways that are unbelievable. I mean, they've entered the middle class, the upper class, they're property owners, business owners, academic, in every area you can imagine. You have Black people who are incredibly talented coming up and taking their place by themselves and succeeding. It would have happened a lot faster had it not been for the left. But nevertheless, in spite of them, it is happening.
Yeah.
I think the result, and racism has receded to a degree
yes.
It's no longer fashionable in any quarters to have anything against anyone.
Thank you.
And that's a good development, which is why I think they have now taken out the microscope. This is the what do they call it? The aggression theory, the microaggression theory, which was developed by Harvard professor Charles Pierce in the 1980s. It looks under the microscope and says, we think this person might be racist because, right? They might have, without even consciously, it's like they project it, and it's all like, they move this way, they do this way, they shoot this way, there's something, and then they study this now in colleges and in high schools, and they have counselors who go in and teach children how to find racism, how to open the microscope. And you notice they only look at people who are not on the left. I mean, they never.
Right.
On the left, you could be as racist as hell, like the Clintons.
Right. Oh, I know. Yeah.
In the White House, where they made these vile, really offensive comments. Of course, the media protected them. They didn't report them. Whereas with Trump, yes, he makes some offensive comments, but they've got snitches in the White House who are reporting every word of it. I mean, Clinton, he doesn't get that kind of protection. But nevertheless, the fact that they have resorted to this kind of micro analysis of people, which is one of the most tyrannical things that I've seen come down the pike, it shows that there's been success because they wouldn't have to do this if real racism, was more prevalent. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but if it was more common. And so I suppose we can, in a sad way, consider that to be an accomplishment, that they need to take out this microscope.
Well, like I have to tell you that it is worse than that. They are teaching kids. They are teaching white kids starting in kindergarten that they are born racist, and so that they and so they immediately owe a debt to blacks and minorities and all that. Now, these are kids who haven't done anything to anybody in their lives, and yet they are coming home in tears, hating themselves for being born racist and all of the mean racist things that they are doing to Black Americans. I have to say that you're correct. Racism, along with every other sin, will exist until Jesus comes back and takes us home. But there is not enough racism in America to stop anybody from doing anything. And the American people have been getting along great for years and years. One thing the civil rights movement never says is that despite our history of racism, it took a whole bunch of white folks to suffer and die to free blacks. The whole civil rights, the whole civil war was fought to liberate blacks. America is a wonderful country, the greatest land of opportunity on this planet. But when you talk to leftists, they say America sucks. Something that fascinated me is that I was raised in this small black community, and for the most part, my home was a shack. When I went back to my community, a young single black lady has built a mansion on that same site, but when you, and most of the blacks who live in that community, they have replaced those shacks with these outrageous homes. But when you talk to them and say, are blacks persecuted in this country, they'll say, absolutely yes. But they cannot tell you in any way has this how this so-called persecution has affected their lives. Blacks are only 12% of the population, and yet so that means that white America elected Barack Obama 2 times. But when you talk to the average black person in my family, white America never wanted Barack Obama in the White House, you know. So like, so there's this myth that blacks are being persecuted in America, and if somebody like Kanye West says that they are not, then like everybody jumps on him and say Kanye West is totally insane. There's another young black lady speaking, conservative, Candace Owens. Fantastic. And this is what we need, these young black people rather than the old farts like me. We need these young, articulate blacks out there spreading the gospel truth about conservatism.
And as far as conservatism goes, you know, the left likes to focus on the glass half empty when they look at American history. I mean, we can go into that. And they do make the point that America has been a white supremacist nation. That's true. That's a fact of history. You know, it's not.
But not today. Right.
My point is that it wasn't necessarily a conscious thing, but it just was how the society broke down in the same way that, you know, Japan is a Japan-centric.
Right.
But the point is that when you take a look today and you talk about things like white privilege, and this is an issue that's being taught on campuses, and you alluded to that when you say a young kid is told, oh, you were born racist. You know, I would say that, yeah, white privilege, what's the answer to it? The answer to it is freedom, is the free market. That's how you extend privilege to everybody. You create opportunity by allowing capital to be invested so people can create businesses, so they can expand businesses. You know, they can get back to belief in God. I mean, they can get back to faith.
Right.
You create, I mean, you go to the American ideals as a way to overcome things like any privilege, because if you have a free market system, people don't have privilege all that long because they have to earn it and create it.
Thank you. Hey, Chuck, and look, I have to be honest, this whole white privilege nonsense annoys me too. I read biographies by Arnold Schwarzenegger and tons of other successful people. Nobody gave them anything to be who they are today. They failed, they worked, they suffered, they sacrificed to become who they are today. Nobody gave them anything. And so to go to somebody like and I'm just using Schwarzenegger as an example, to go to him and tell him, well, that he owes this and that he owes it. He doesn't owe anybody anything because he worked for it. You know, and that's called America. Now he can freely give and give and give, and that's a wonderful thing. And the Bible the Bible tells us to give. But don't come to him and tell him that he owes. He doesn't owe anybody anything because he suffered and worked for it and earned it. And that's the American way.
Lloyd, sort of reaching the end here, so I'd like you to talk a little bit about what you're doing now. Where can people reach you? How they can get your website, your show? Talk a little bit about what you're up to.
Well, most of my time is spent on the road with the conservative campaign committee. We go from state to state helping to get conservatives elected in House and Senate races, because we have to stop this so-called blue wave, which I think ain't gonna happen.
Doesn't look like it's gonna be a big
yeah. So
how is it working out? I mean, you're going state to state. Have you been to Massachusetts, by the way? Or Massachusetts?
The last rates that we did a while, they start to run together. Oh shoot! But whoever the candidate was, we won. My mind is going totally blank. But folks can contact me at lloydmarcus.com. And I would love for people to contribute to my work if they can, because I was the head of a large conservative group, but we were so attacked by leftists, and they tried to make me and everybody associated with me a hater. So for me to be able to continue speaking freely and telling the truth, I had to resign from that organization so that now all of the hate and heat falls on me, and I'm fine because I know I'm on the right side of the issues.
Well, Lloyd, when I put this show up on YouTube and elsewhere, I'll put a link to your website, and I'd urge people to check it out and support you and your work. And
Thank you.
I certainly appreciate what you're doing, and I'd like to contribute in any way I can.
Great, pal.
All right, Lloyd. Listen, Lloyd Marcus, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
Really, it's been fun.
Yeah, really good talk. All right. Take care. Have a good one. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
All right. And I shall return tomorrow at the usual time.